Good evening. Welcome. I'm Reverend Jeff Snyder, and this is Beyond Loaves and Fishes, the live stream Bible study. And tonight, it's going to be exciting tonight. We're going to get into the book of Joshua. We're going to get into the first couple of chapters. We're going to talk about spies. We're going to talk about being in hostile enemy territory. We're going to talk about a prostitute who's incredibly smart and who's extremely faithful. And we're going to talk about walking across a flood on faith alone. So, well, perhaps. We'll see how far we get. But those are the kinds of things we're going to be dealing with tonight. And that's just the first couple of chapters of the book. So this is going to be fun. Hey, Cheney, I'm glad to see you're here. And we'll wait a couple of minutes, see who else is going to show up and be part of our group. And then we'll get started here on Joshua. While we're waiting, just a little thought that I had. Some of our experiences recently. Before you give somebody a piece of your mind, pause and think, maybe they're already at a tipping point. Maybe they don't need a piece of your mind. You give them that and you'll be driving them out of theirs. So instead, think about that for a minute. And if you're planning on doing that by email, think about it twice. And hopefully, by the time you've thought about it a couple of times, the moment will have passed and you'll moved on. And that person won't be burdened by what you were intending to do. And frankly, anytime you're going to give somebody a piece of your mind, ask yourself, is it for their benefit, or are you just trying to make yourself feel better? All right, that's all the advice for tonight. So, hey, Sherry, I'm glad you're here. Glad you're with us. Especially by email. Oh, yes, especially by email, because you can't take it back. You're right. You can regret that so quick, especially if it's late at night when you're firing off an email. Whew, that can be a problem. So, here we are. We got the book of Joshua here. We've got a history. This was written a good deal after the events that occurred. This was written when the people of Israel were either in exile to Babylon or were facing Babylonian exile very soon. So, they're trying to make sense in what they've written. Hey, Silverland, how are you? I'm glad to see you tonight. Welcome. Glad you joined us. So, they're trying to make sense of what's happened to them. How did they get where they were? They're looking back on the past. They're trying to find themselves a sense of purpose and identity and meaning and hope out of all this. And do we have any sources like that today? Can you think of any kind of documents that you've read that gave you that sense of purpose and history and hope, that brought together the events of our past in such a way that makes sense and gives you a feeling that you could have hope moving into the future, that we weathered some terrible things in the past, we'll get through this too? That's basically what we're doing here. Joshua tries to answer the questions, where did we go wrong? And how can we be restored? And right now I'd say something really witty about a Talking Heads song, but it's left my mind. So this is something about, this is not my beautiful house, this is not my beautiful wife. But anyway, don't worry about it. So, Joshua's text brings together a lot of different stories. They put them all together. They've pulled together pieces of the past, and they're putting them all together in this one document with stories and lists and exhortations that were written originally serving different purposes and have all been brought together into this one narrative, providing some interesting and diverse theological perspectives in them if you read it carefully enough. Well, we have one narrator throughout. X is the editor, and X is our friendly narrator bringing us through the book. The book has storytellers with different perspectives who will tell us who God is and what God is doing back in the time when Israel was just being founded. And when we look at that, and we look at how this is assembled, some of the present-day arguments about scriptural texts where they say, oh, it can't be true because the texts don't agree with each other. There's one point of view here, one point of view there. Well, that's a really simple-minded and downright ignorant perspective in a lot of ways, because this is an incredibly complex library of texts. It spans over 1,500 years of time. It takes the Israelites, it takes the writers from the earliest peoples, a tribal people, to fully established urban dwellers. And needless to say, the perspective changes through time. And when you're dealing with the Jewish authors, they kind of like to argue with each other. So you can have one book saying one thing, and one book will come along and say, oh yeah, you painted an awfully rosy picture. Let me show you the other side of the story. So, but here we are in Joshua. The Israelites have pretty well lost their geographical identity. They're living with strangers in a strange land, in a strange culture, like so many displaced peoples are forced to do today. And the narrator reminds them that of when God gave them the now lost promised land, when God walked with them closely. And they're going to try to discover here where God is in their difficulties, which is always a good exercise for all of us to undertake, actually. And why this has happened to them. And the narrator recounts how the ancestors came to the land. Don't we all have the urge to try to make sense of what is happening in our lives today at any given moment? When we look to the storylines of our own lives, the histories, and you try to tease them apart and say, how did we get to the place we are? Where was God with us in this? And you can see that this urge, this desire, goes way back. It goes all the way back. So, different stories complicate this message of hope found in God's faithfulness to Israel. We're looking back on those glory days. It prompts the exiled generation to consider how they're going to move forward. They're pretty ambivalent about their relationship with these non-Israelites that they're living amongst. And they're asking, what type of allegiance and obedience does God really desire from us? How can we navigate in this complex society we find ourselves in and still be obedient to God? Or to become obedient to God again and perhaps get ourselves restored. And they're also asking who God is available to. Is it only the Jewish people? Is it only males amongst the Jewish people? Or does the divines transcend all of our human categories? To have relationships with everyone, both with women in a male-dominated society. That was an odd idea back then. And with non-Israelites as well. Shocking thought, but could it be? We'll see what the story says here in a few minutes. So, we have powerful questions that are well worth examining, and well worth us re-examining in light of modern day. We need to reconsider our assumptions as well of what God wants out of a relationship with us and who is God willing to have a relationship with. The questions suggest the Israelites are a people of not one distinct culture, but with a wide variety of cultural backgrounds. We've got people rubbing shoulders with a whole bunch of other people living in really complex environments. And so what does it mean to be faithful to God, and who is God going to bless in this? Is it just the Israelites, or is it both Israelites and non-Israelites? And we'll get a hint of that when we get into the story of the spies who go into Jericho. And we're about to get started. Now, let's pick up with Joshua. If you want to read along with me, we're going to be in Joshua, 1st chapter, verses 1 through 9. We'll just start real quick here. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, The Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, My servant Moses is dead. Now proceed to cross the Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the Israelites. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I will have given to you, as I promised to Moses, from the wilderness and the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites to the great sea in the west shall be your territory. No one shall be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall put this people in possession of the land that I swore to their ancestors to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to act in accordance with all the law that my servant Moses commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may be successful wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth. You shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to act in accordance with all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous, and then you shall be successful. I hereby command you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Wow, now there's a beginning. I would suggest, I'm going to make a humble suggestion here. Hey, Will, good to see you tonight. I'm glad you're here. I would suggest when you wake up in the morning that you read those last lines to yourself again, beginning with verse 9, or just read verse 9. I hereby command you, be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I think that would be a great motivation for all of us any day of the week. So Joshua is our main character here, and he has unwavering faith in God. And he is to be in command of the military conquest in the promised land, and so he must have unwavering faith. He is going to need to be very courageous moving forward, and he needs to be someone who will obey God's instructions, even when it seems to go against common wisdom. And that's some piece of advice that I would give to you all today and any day. There will be times in your life when God is going to call you to do a thing, and it's going to go against common wisdom. It's going to not be in common sense, and that's where you have to decide if you're going to step out on faith or if you're going to fall back into common wisdom. Trust me, when God called me into ministry, he called me at midlife at a time when I should be, stable in my career, working towards advancement that will lead to security and retirement. And that was the common wisdom. And God said, never mind the common wisdom, follow me. And I did. And it's been wonderful and exciting, but it requires a big leap of faith to do that on any given day. Moses changed Joshua's name from Hoshea, pardon me, I hope that's correct, meaning salvation, to Joshua, meaning Yahweh is salvation. So Hosea alone cannot bring Israel to salvation. That requires God. It was quite a purposeful name change going on here, and it meant quite a bit to the Israelites. Joshua becomes Moses' successor and will enact Yahweh's salvation for the people of Israel. Now, let's continue the story. Joshua chapter 1, verses 10 through 18. Here we go. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, pass through the camp and command the people, prepare your provisions, for in 3 days you are to cross over the Jordan. to go in to take possession of the land that the Lord your God gives you to possess. To the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the word that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is providing you a place of rest, and will give you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your livestock shall remain in the land that Moses gave you beyond the Jordan. But all the warriors among you shall cross over, armed before your kindred, and shall help them, until the Lord gives rest to your kindred as well as to you, and they too take possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving them. Then you shall return to your own land and take possession of it, the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan, to the east. They answered Joshua, all that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we obeyed Moses in all things, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your orders and disobeys your words, whatever your command, shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. Like Moses, Joshua is leading the Israelites to safety across the river, the Jordan River. And this is no small thing. We'll see in a little while what that meant, especially considering the time of the year that they're going to cross. Before they lead the people and the animals across, though, a responsible leader needs to know what the land is like beyond the river, what awaits them there in that far country before he commits his people. And so now was the time. This was the moment to send out spies to reconnoiter the land beyond the river, to check it out, to see who's there and what threats await them. And now we're in Joshua chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. Then Joshua, son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and spent the night there. The king of Jericho was told, some Israelites have come here tonight to search out the land. Then the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come only to search out the whole land. This isn't starting off so well for our 2 spies. What happened there in the night? Did they have a little too much to drink? Did they blab around other people? How did word get out so quickly? Now, here we have a story of Rahab and Joshua's spies. Here's coming right at the beginning of the book, getting us right into the thick of things at the beginning, into the heart of the action. And it deals with Israel's entry into the land of Canaan, and it reflects upon Israel's struggles against a cunning and enormous oppressive enemy. This is not small potatoes. Obviously, they've got a good system, too. Here's a couple of spies. They've gone in, and they've already been detected right away. So, throughout the book, the Israelites will suffer because of disobedience of some of them. But they will also witness God's abounding graciousness. God will fight for them against their enemies in spite of some of the mess-ups that they'll get involved with. It's not merely a struggle for territory and control, but like Exodus, is grounded in a vision of justice and freedom from tyrants. That's what they're trying to establish here. A different way of living, something that's pretty alien to where they had come from. Now, the land of promise also is a land of covenantal fidelity. It's not a land dominated by the whims of the Canaanite kings, or so it won't be moving forward. Hence, we have spies who the need for which lets us know how hard this fight is going to be, how hard it's going to be to take over. And I'm trying to read this message. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. Yes, I did. I said prostitute. That's what she was. So, but she was a great many other things as well, as we shall see. The spies spend the night in the house of the prostitute Rahab, but their intentions there are not explained. Whether or not it was simply to spend the night in a safe place, we'll just leave that where it is. That lack of information lets us speculate. We're not going to take that too far. We'll just say, have they become sidetracked? Would sin jeopardize the community right here at the start, before things even have begun? I don't know. We'll find out. So, would Rahab and her confederates harm the spies? If they're loyal to the king, they have every reason to do so. They have every reason to call them out. Are they simply to obtain information, are spies, about the town from anyone who's accessible? Did they blab in the night? We have no answers. But because they can be entertained, the spy's safety in the end is all the more surprising. Comically fast, our spy's presence is made known. It doesn't seem like we've got really good spies here. To the larger community, perhaps pointing to the poor judgment of going there in the first place, and leaving open the possibility that Rahab has sold them out. We've got a mystery on our hands here at the beginning. It's very exciting. So the king inquires of Rahab. He understands the spies' mission. They're going to be trying to scan out the whole land, not just Jericho. And so there's this threat of the Israelite presence just on the other side of the river. How will Rahab respond when she is questioned directly by her king? Joshua chapter 2, verses 4 through 7. But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. Then she said, "True, the men came to me, but I did not know where they came from. And when it was time to close the gate at dark, the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, for you can overtake them." She had, however, brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of flax that she had laid out on the roof. So the men pursued them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Really? So this is where Warner Brothers got "they went that-a-way" from. Goes all the way back to the Old Testament and to Rahab. And so Warner Brothers picked from the very best. We knew that Rahab was on the ball here. The narrator lets us know that Rahab hid the spies at severe risk to herself. And Rahab is a Canaanite woman, and she might be expected to tell the king's messengers where they are. But she doesn't. Instead, she sends the king's messengers away through the gate, out into the wilderness, off on a wild goose chase. Hurry, and you'll catch them before they get to the Jordan and the fords. Run, run, run! And once they're outside, the spies are safer because the gates are closed for the night. Those pursuers aren't going to get back into the city until morning. This is a very clever plan she's got going here. So in Joshua chapter 2, verses 8 through 21, a deal will be struck. Before they went to sleep, she came to them on the roof and said to the men, this is an interesting place to negotiate. You get them out there on the roof where things are a little precarious. They said, now we're going to talk a deal. So, and she said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that dread of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan, in Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no courage left in any of us because of you. The Lord your God is indeed God of heaven above and on earth below. Now then, since I have dealt kindly with you, swear to me by the Lord that you in turn will deal kindly with my family. Give me a sign of good faith, that you will spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. The men said to her, our life for yours. If you do not tell this business of ours, then we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when the Lord gives us the land. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was at the outer side of the city wall, and she resided within the wall itself. She said to them, go toward the hill country, so that the pursuers may not come upon you. Hide yourselves there 3 days, until the pursuers have returned. Then afterwards you may go your way. The men said to her, we will be released from this oath that you have made us swear to you if we invade the land, and you do not tie this crimson cord to the window through which you let us down, and you do not gather into your house your father and mother, your brothers, and all of your family. If any of you go out of the door of your house into the street, they shall be responsible for their own death, and we shall be innocent. But if a hand is laid upon any who are with you in the house, we shall bear the responsibility for their death. But if you tell this business of ours, then we shall be released from this oath that you made us swear to you. She said, according to your words, so be it. She sent them away, and they departed. Then she tied the crimson cord to the window. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Like lamb's blood over the door? Only after the comical incident they went that away a moment, does the narrator let us know that the spies really have been hidden by Rahab's ingenuity, and she has risked lying to the king's men to save Joshua's spies. She hid them with great care. The reader continues to receive more information about the safety of the spies as the narrator relates the king's men following Rahab's advice and leaving the city in hot pursuit, leaving the spies safe. Joshua's spies are out of immediate danger, and they discover to their surprise that Rahab, this foreign woman, is a person of great faith in God, in the God of Israel. She's heard, and she lets them know that all of her people have heard of their coming and been greatly impressed and downright terrified of what they've been able to accomplish so far, which is really vital information to have. And it shows the degree of concern that Rahab has as she tends to them immediately, despite the danger to herself. Rahab's advice to the king's messengers to leave the premises and quickly pursue the spies has saved their lives. And Rahab understands God's plan. And God will help with the victory that they otherwise wouldn't be able to achieve, not against such an organized foe. She recites the Exodus message. She knows this. And Rahab swears loyalty to Israel's God. She asks that she and her family might be spared when Joshua comes to Jericho and the battle to come, and the spies agree. They make a negotiated settlement between them. Rahab's help continues. She helps Joshua's men escape the city quietly. She's well located at the wall, even so that they can go away, and she can tell them to go the opposite direction that she'd sent their pursuers in, so that they could remain safe in the hill country for 3 days. Joshua's men respond by explaining to her how she and her family's lives might be saved in Jericho if she marks the house with a red cord, stressing that it is her responsibility to see that the house is properly designated, just like in the original Passover. Well, similar to the original Passover. The directions have been given on how to stay safe during the ravages of the battle to come, which is very important information to have for Rahab. So this is quite the story. This is impressive. And now I see by the clock on the computer that we're going to have to leave it here. We're going to have to leave the final escape and the momentous crossing of the Jordan by the people of Israel for next week. And that's an impressive story in and of itself. We'll get to that next week. But for now, I want to thank you all for coming, for taking your time with us to become this little community of faith once again. I really appreciate it. I enjoy these evenings we spend together. You could be doing anything at this point, and I'm really glad you're spending some time here with me. So we'll do it again next week. But in the meantime, let's have a moment of prayer. Dear God, we thank you for this opportunity to come together and study your word. Thank you for all who have attended tonight. Be with those who couldn't make it. Keep them all safe. And help us to be people of faith. People who understand that we too need to be courageous. We too need to step out every day with you, reminding ourselves in the morning to be ready to do the good that you would have done in the world today and every day. Lord, be with us as we go our various ways. Bless us in our travels, and may all that we say and do bring greater glory to your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, you all have a good evening. I thank you all for coming. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm glad you have too. And we will see you again next week. And so until then, God bless. Have a good night.